Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott, and with summer here, I am here to welcome our guest, Nadine Artemis. She is a beauty philosopher and the founder of Libations, and we are going to be talking about ways to safely enjoy botanicals as a form of self-care for your beauty ritual. And we're going to talk about, in addition to that, this beautiful sun, we're going to find out why the sun is actually beneficial for our skin and what sunscreen does to the body. And we're going to talk about the importance of using pure plant extracts as holistic body care. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Nadine Artemis is an author. She's an aromacologist and a green beauty-botanical formulator. And she's done this for over 25 years. She has pioneered the beyond organic luxury skincare and wellness brand Living Libations. Nadine is the author of 2 books, including Renegade Beauty and Holistic Dental Care. So I just want to add this for those of you who are looking for natural products like I have been. The products and concepts in Renegade Beauty are for those that are seeking an ethical alternative to caustic cosmetics, problematic pharmaceuticals, and environmentally eroding chemicals. The products also inspire people to rethink conventional notions of beauty and wellness. I wanted to add that because it's such an important thing. A couple of months ago, we talked about the environment, and we are just being bombarded with chemicals all the time. And I recently had a toxin test done and found out that I actually had glyphosate and parabens in my body. So high levels. So I am just really thrilled that we have you here today, Nadine. Welcome to Smart Women Talk.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I'm not alone with this, am I? Right now, looking for natural products and being bombarded with chemicals that I found out. I had a toxin test done by a functional medicine doctor and found out I had parabens, and I'm sure you know all about that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, there's some studies that show too that because in Renegade Beauty, I have a chapter on breast health, and my mother did die from breast cancer. So I'm passionate about that subject. And I also knew a lot about her and her medical history. So I was able to sort of look at that and it sort of helped me see some of the patterns and things that we can look at. But one of the things that did come up is that diseased breast tissue, 99%, when diseased breast tissue is studied, it shows that 99% do have parabens stored in there. So it's also a fascinating thing because parabens are allowed in certified organic cosmetics. And for a cosmetic, I'm very much into the certification of individual ingredients, right? Like the jojoba, or if you're eating food, right? The broccoli, the whatever. But then when we're certifying a product, then it only, like for beauty, it only has to be, I can't remember if it's 70 or 80%, but it doesn't have to be 100% organic. And then within that 20, 30%, so much is allowed that I would never want to actually do to an ingredient or a cosmetic preparation, including parabens are allowed in that. And parabens, to be effective as a preservative in a product, they only have to be included. You're only going to need to use them at a 0.01% for a paraben for it to work. So you can see how this minuscule ingredient, right, that doesn't make up a big part of the formula, is staying in our bodies and wreaking havoc in the afterlife. So many things are preserved with parabens. So
Yeah, so it's a preservative. Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is going to be very exciting because all of us are trying to look beautiful. It's summertime and, you know, we've got other regimens that we'll talk about, like the sun care products and that. But before we even start, I read about your childhood, your curiosity with plants and flowers and everything. Can you tell us how this whole concept of Renegade Beauty began? Because I will bet you it started when you were a little girl.
Yeah. You know, being a bit older and having some hindsight in life, I feel like I can really see just so many of the things that I was curious about or interested in, sort of that between, you know, being not that I remember baby, but being a little kid and 18 just really shapes the present moment. And I loved, you know, mushing and melding, you know, plants and flowers and making concoctions with mud and really just spending, you know, so much time in nature. We were lucky to have a beautiful backyard and we had a little cottage that we could go to as well. But also just like, I feel like I also just spent a lot of time just staring at plants and just being in the middle of the woods and looking at leaves and the geometry of nature. And then also inside, you know, I remember, you know, being in grade 2 and also, you know, throwing on some Boney M and boogieing out to that and then taking many ingredients, toxic or, you know, my mom's Chanel No. 5 perfume and mixing those in like the blender. So, you know, obviously curious by nature, but also just had this like inclination to want to mix and meld and put things together. So it was really fun in grade 9 when we had you know, one of those rare moments where you could self-direct learn and sort of pick your own subject. And that's when I was figuring out what I would do. And I found a book at the library that was like directed for kids, easy to understand, a book on cosmetics and the history, a whole chapter on perfume. And I had a whole collection of perfume. You know, I was the youngest in the family, so I got all the hand-me-downs and the clothing and then the cosmetics. And again, I would mix and meld, but I didn't, you know, back then we didn't know, oh, the perfume, like the history of perfume. It's not presently made with flowers, but the book went into the history and the sort of mystery of it. And that I found really fascinating. Also because my great-grandfather was at some point the president of the London Egyptology Society, and he would go on the archaeological digs to be the illustrator. He was a beautiful artist. And there was like, so we had pictures of like the blue lotus flower, Temple of Luxor and stuff that he had painted. So the book really talked about the history of perfumery in Egypt, you know, and using the blue lotus and that kind of stuff. So I was really fascinated. And the book also said that these ingredients are called essential oils. Those are from the distillate, and that's something that you could find at a health food store. So my mom drove me to the big city of Toronto, and we went to the health food store and found these essential oils. And that's where I got my first whiff of like orange, jasmine, just lemongrass, lavender. And, you know, it's not like my grade 9 brain knew the difference between naturals and synthetics at that time, but definitely like my olfactory system did. And there was something definitely different percolating when I smelled those aromas that was different than, you know, just picking up my bottle of like Christian Dior perfume or something. So I recreated Nina Ricci's L'air de Temps using the essential oils for the science fair project. And that was super fun. And, you know, then life would continue to be, you know, normal. And the Body Shop came out and it seemed like, oh, it's like green beauty. I don't even know if those words existed then. And that was super fun. But then I got to university and I was actually, you know, skipping class, watching a talk show. And Lisa Bonet, who I got to later meet, which was super fun because she was just thanking me for my work. Actually on breast health and stuff. She had just seen a talk I'd done. And I was like, well, what's really fascinating is seeing you on that talk show, connecting the dots between food production, the environment, pesticides, that whole thing, which is very new. This is like around 1990. And so I found that fascinating and it totally changed the way I was eating. And this was really a period of a couple of weeks, which then really informed. I was just like, well, what's the ingredients in the bathroom stuff? And then I just saw that it was just like this, you know, fake petroleum promised land, and that the Body Shop ingredients, there's no dewberry plant. The fuzzy peach bath oil had never been in peach. The cucumber face toner never met a cucumber. And so it was actually, so I went really into like endeavoring to make my own food. And that was so fun because it opened up a whole new everything there. And luckily there was a farmer's market in my university town. And I would pass by this little health food store every day that was like inside a house called Grains and Beans and Things. And I bought every book, every bean. And that was great. And they even had like a selection of essential oils. And then I was making my own food. And then I was like, oh my God, like now I get to actually have an excuse to make my own body care products. And so as I was going through university, I just started to make my own perfumes and lip balms and creams and make those for friends and family. I made something called waitress legs because everybody was waitressing that would help with spider veins. And it was so fun to see, making things that help people with their eczema, their scarring. And I was like, not only is this clean and pure, but we're actually making things that are effective. And that was really fascinating to me.
Well, you know what I'd love to do for our listeners is let's just talk about right now the importance. I mentioned it before we started the interview, how important it is to have these natural products and what natural products are versus what we get in the department stores. Or when we go to the pharmacy and then, we see all the products there. But the products that are available to us, whether it's for skincare or whether it's for the makeup that we want to put on, even hair care. Can you talk about the difference between getting something that's store-bought? I know this is a huge topic, right?
Yeah.
That may have chemicals and different things in it versus doing something natural. And like the importance of it, and then how it affects us physically and also just emotionally, because you're talking about scents.
Yeah. Well, I think, we definitely have a chemical burden today that just kind of grows annually since things got pretty chemicalized in the 50s. And, the average North American woman puts on for beauty, in the name of beauty, over 200 chemicals a day. And many of these things, we just don't know the long-term results. How long is paraben stored in the body, for example? And, so many of these ingredients are petroleum derived. And really, we know there's not, any cell in our body that's parched for a petroleum derivative to make it beautiful or function properly. Because I really feel too, like health and beauty are interconnected. Like if we don't have healthy cells, it's going to be hard to, feel that beauty. And again, with beauty, I'm not talking like we're going to be supermodels or anything, just that like, inward functioning that results in your own version of like your potential of your beauty, right? So your radiance, your glow, your feeling of beautiful, like, because that's important too. Beauty is a feeling as well. So there's all that going on. And then if we look at like how we talked about parabens in the beginning, and I was mentioning it's only 0.01 in a formula, which is tiny, but look how much that tiny ingredient is affecting and disrupting our bodies and our endocrine system. So to me, every drop matters. There's no, so there's sort of a game too of like, this is what's in it. And they'll highlight 3 ingredients, active ingredients or whatever. And then you'll find somehow, scroll through the website, find the small, like full ingredient list, which is generally a lot of BS. And our bodies don't really need those games either. So I feel like every drop counts. And when nature offers just like pretty much everything we need in the sense of botanicals, that are aligned to our bodies, aligned to ourselves, that we can use for beauty, it just makes so much sense rather than applying these lifeless liquids, made, sold at the drugstores and the cosmetic counters, instead of like capturing, the boundless beauty of nature that really can work with every cell. So when we think, I like to think of it as cosmoetics, because cosmetic is something that's applied to you for beauty. Whereas I think if we engage with the cosmos, that's actually where we're going to find the information to revive our cells, because we are literally a part of the cosmos. Physicists know that, stardust is basically in our bodies. It's the same connection. And so the beauty counters don't really have a lot of solutions, other than there'll be that temporary, like, yes, you have just put moisture on your face, temporary plumping of the cells, but through chemicals that have, short-term and long-term effects on a cellular level. And, we really do know, like, beauty is really going to come from the health of the cells. And then a lot of the cosmetics that we're using also create some catch-22s or some vicious cycles that just can probably be frustrating on a daily level, where we're, washing with soap, and then we're, which we now know. So we've got like a lot of chemicals that can be endocrine disruptors, which is our endocrine is our hormonal system. And there's, we have lots of things that show about, parabens, affecting the liver and the endocrine disruption, or that's going to affect fertility and all that kind of stuff. But what we also now know from the research in the past 10, 20 years is the microbiome. So as much as we are a body with billions of cells, we are also a body with billions of bacteria. And as gross as it may sound, we're basically hosts to a bustling banquet of bacteria. And we actually want to allow the bacteria to be our beauticians. Whereas most of modern skincare, not only is it disrupting the endocrine system, it is mutating and the microbiome. And that is a key thing. So now we also know that through, looking under a microscope and looking at the microbiome, that soap, surfactants in our foaming cleansers, even if it's something mild foaming cleanser from the health food store, we now know when we look under a microscope that these chemicals leave surfactants that are like splinters, microscopic splinters that are left on the stratum corneum, which is the top layer of our skin. And they get lodged in there and they don't go away with rinsing. And then you get this daily buildup year after year of these microscopic splinters that are disrupting the microbiome and the bacteria that we do need intact to actually be our beautician and take care of our skin.
Wow. So you just mentioned microbiome, which is our whole gut system.
Yeah. So the microbiome, which I'm sure people have heard about it, but like, what is that? And it's just the micro, and the bio being meaning like sort of like the biome being the body in this case. And we have microbiome areas. Really, the whole body is, and everything about it affects like the endocrine system, digestive, immune system. So it's fully connected. But there's the gut microbiome, which is where I think a lot of people would have heard that, which obviously is connected to our mouth's microbiome. So, so I do also talk about oral care, and I have a book on holistic dentistry, which is, totally connected to the mouth's microbiome. Then our skin microbiome is huge because the skin is our largest organ, and its microbiome, it's like just like a little like land. It'll be different in different areas. So, the armpits are going to be a pretty heavy microbiome area. The face is very active. The palms of our hands and the bottoms of our feet, very little, bacterial action there. Not a lot happening. So yeah, there's different areas of the body, like different terrains. And now we also know things like, rosacea is really this mite that is living, which is, so there's a disruption to the microbiome that allows that mite to exist on the skin, creating the rosacea. We now know where there's like, an eczema or psoriasis breakout, so to speak. We know that there's been a plunge in the microbiome of that area, so to speak. And then also there's the nose, ear, throat microbiome, which is another key area. Obviously, right now, we want to keep that healthy. And then for women, another key microbiome area is the yoni, so the vaginal canal and that whole area, which really, even a infertility issue that may seem insurmountable may literally just be a microbiome issue in that reproductive area. Or we know now too that like inflamed gums and gum issues, So that means the mouth microbiome's off. We now know that that can be connected to a not full-term pregnancy, for example, can create a premature birth. So we can see all the interconnections, and we want, whatever we're doing for self-care, to really take care of the microbiome, to take care of the cells. If we're doing anything that's opposing that, then we're creating, more effort for ourselves and more work. So when I go into this back in my university days, and really ever since then, what my inquiry is and my curiosity is, I'm into I'm complex, but I really am low maintenance. So I always like to find what's the least amount of effort that I can put into really, the health of my hairs, my nails, my skin, my mouth, because I don't want to be doing 10-step rituals to wash my face. It's fun, but I'm not really, don't really have that kind of time. And so I'm always looking at in the body systems, if we stand back, if we get out of the way, what's the design here? What's the original design? We weren't born with a toothbrush in our hand. So what is going on in the body that will take care of our mouths without, what do we have to do to free up that system first before we start, adding the toothpaste into that scenario? So that's what I like to look at, whether it's the skin, skin health, breast health, yoni health, oral health. That's sort of the way that I'll go into that.
So, this is just so important because you've touched the science, the microbiome, the parabens, the endocrine system. So what I would love to do now is for you to give us some tips, and let's just start at the top and go down. So, for our skin, what should we be doing for our skin? And so, for a beauty regimen, and, also maybe mention the kind of products that you would suggest for that and what you have available, so that after the show, we can all go explore. Because I know everyone listening to or watching this right now is probably thinking, oh my gosh, do my products have these chemicals in them? And, could I actually be putting something on that's healing? So let's start with the skin. And I also want to include, when we talk about skin, since it's summer, I want you to talk about not just the skincare, but the suntan lotion. So 2 things. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, one really great thing to do for skin health right away is to stop using soap. So get your natural bar soap. We have a clay soap and a charcoal soap, and that you're just going to use for pits and bits, or scrubbing your nails, washing your hands. That's the soap story. But we don't need to use it on our face. And certainly, I think of the Dial or the Irish Fresh ads or whatever, there's soap lather all over the body in the shower. And maybe that's what we think we still need to do. We don't. So your arms and legs and thighs, they just never need soap. Your bathing and showering is all it needs. Of course, unless, you're, up to your elbows in dirt and you're gardening, obviously you want to shower that off. So we don't need soap in those parts of the body, and certainly not the face. So we look to the ancient methods of washing the skin, which really involve oil. Oil, picks up and lifts off dirt. And there was many systems in Roman baths, Turkish baths, Chinese culture, traditional Chinese culture, Ayurvedic, Egypt. They all had different methods of oiling the skin and then removing that and then bathing. So whether that would be with a strigil or a gua sha or buffalo horn, they would all have these things where they would oil up and then just run that over the body with a cloth or one of those things. So, and of course, but it's not going to be any oil. You don't want to use petroleum oil or baby oil. And you don't want to, in the natural realm, you don't want to be using rancid oils. I never suggest using an almond or a grapeseed or a peach kernel. Those are probably not 100% pure, but even if they were, they go rancid so quickly that by the time you've got it at your house, it's rancid. And we don't want to be putting rancid oils on our body because that's a free, reactive oxygen species. Olive oil is beautiful. Jojoba is my absolute favorite. That's Jojoba. And that's from a desert plant. And it's actually a liquid wax. It looks and performs like, most oil, but it's actually liquid wax. So its stability can be up to 100 years if stored properly. So that's not going to go rancid. And, things like coconut oil are beautiful, but that can be a bit thick. So that's like, we make beautiful oils called the best skin ever. And that's what people use to cleanse and wash their face. Kourtney Kardashian, for example, buys that by the liter. It's her favorite cleansing oil and body oil of all time. So, which I just think is funny because obviously,
and what is it called?
She would, the best skin ever. So the one that she buys is the sea buckthorn best skin. Yeah, okay. And then we have sea buckthorn best skin ever, sandalwood best skin ever, rose best skin ever, immortelle best skin ever, frankincense best skin ever. So we have a little family of best skin evers. Those are all beautiful for washing your face. You can also use it to care for your body. You get out of the shower, you can just put some on. I take it like every time I have a massage. That's the oil we're using. But to wash the face, so you're going to wash the face with oil, which for some may sound strange, especially if you have acne. Or people, I know people that have had, cystic acne for like 10 years or, like a decade, and they're scared to use the best skin ever or oil to wash their face, of course, but, they see improvement within 24 hours. And yeah, so it's really neat, no matter the skin condition, whether it's eczema, rosacea, or, acne, mild to more cystic, it all clears up. So it, depends. It may be like overnight, like if it's just, you're bringing back some glow. Rosacea starts clearing up right away. So you just see it could take a couple days to a couple weeks. And there's just a real transformation of the skin as you get off the soap and the synthetics, because also with the soap, so you're using soap and then there's a tightness and a dryness. We're removing bacteria that we don't want to. And then we're using like different chemicals to put the moisture back in. And then that moisture, could be from petroleum derivatives, soy derivatives, rancid, winterized, deodorized oils, just a whole bunch of chemicals, or for acne, we're trying to deal with it with like a benzoyl peroxide or different chemicals, which are really disrupting the whole microbiome, and we're also, as a nation, into overexfoliation, which we also need to pause on because we're way too rough and we don't want to be using like plastic beads to be scrubbing our skin. So when I talk about washing the face, it's just with the oil, you just take a cloth. We have organic cloths, but just like a classic terry face cloth, you wet a spot on it, cold or warm, whatever you prefer, put on that squirt of oil, and then you're just, massaging that over the face. It removes makeup. You might want to use a round cotton pad to remove the mascara and stuff. You put, add a little water to that cotton pad, a squirt of oil, all your makeup will lift off. You've cleansed the face, you splash it with water, and then you can use the same best skin ever, one drop, to just then be your actual moisturizer. We make lovely serums and creams, but it's also like that one bottle could be your friend for everything: your body, your face, your baby, your beard. If you're a guy, men use the frankincense or the sandalwood best skin ever. So it's really easy. You can also use it to like oil your hair before you wash it, put it into the scalp, clears dandruff. It's like, like the best sea buckthorn best skin ever could like literally be its own business. It's just so popular.
Okay, and really I'm ordering some. No, I really am serious about that. So let's talk about sunscreen, because, yes, you see like in California, they have the little by the beach, come get your sunscreen. Yeah. And what I know is there's so many chemicals in it that when the scientists are formulating it, or the manufacturers, they have to wear hazmat suits because it is so toxic. And then we're putting it all over our babies and our bodies. Yeah. Talk about that. And then do you have a product, or do you suggest that? Because I know plants can actually have sun protection. And I'm wondering if you put the plants in the lotions to protect us so we don't have to use chemicals.
Yeah, so there's so much there. I mean, I love talking about this, and I actually I have a chapter in Renegade Beauty on sun and skin health. And I also, in the next few years, I'll write a book on sun and light. Anyway, so we got a few things there, because there's also the understanding. We need to understand that the sun is the capstone of our existence, and we would not be alive without it. And it's something that we need to understand and bring into our bodies wisely. We need vitamin D, and we need the infrared information. So there's a whole spectrum of visible and invisible light waves that we literally need to thrive and survive. And it's not all about the violet rays that are creating the increased melanin for a tan. So we also, we have vitamin D. So then a good question is, well, can't we just take vitamin D and not be in the sun? The sun creates a form of vitamin D that is different than the fat soluble vitamin in the food and in the capsules. We need the fat soluble vitamins. We need the sun as well, because it creates a water soluble form of vitamin D. It's actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. And we need that to like function. So it actually this isn't scientific, but I think of it as sort of this liquid, love that we need in our bodies to actually function. It's actually like, even though we think of the sun as sort of drying, when we're interacting with the sun wisely, we're creating like an internal lubrication, and a healthy cholesterol sulfate is formed from that, as well as so many different things that we don't even know everything yet. But like, we increase antimicrobial peptides when we're in the sun. We create this thing called cathelicidins, which help us prevent cytokine storms in the body. So there's a whole alchemy there.
And when you're talking about this during the time of the pandemic,
yes,
and so many of us, whether we had COVID or we got the booster, I mean, the shots themselves, a lot of people are having these cytokine storms with the immune system becoming overactive and triggering major autoimmune disease.
Yes.
And they're even looking at long haul COVID as an autoimmune disease. So
yes, and I've been talking about, bringing, because of my dental health work, just, which I believe that book was published in 2012. And thankfully, a lot of doctors then were talking about D and really seeing the connection to the bones and the teeth. And we need to be vitamin D sufficient. But I got to say, like, every year I only learn more and more that we need to be sufficient in D. And it's a thing that moves. So it's not just like taking it for a month and then you put it in. Like, it will, we got to keep feeding the vitamin D, and we need to be at sufficient levels. We know now that, like, it even keeps, like, if we are not sufficient, there's a whole bunch of stuff that isn't going to happen. If we don't, so many like genes express like right when we're sufficient. So if we're not sufficient in vitamin D, then we don't have a whole bunch of our body systems functioning. We know now even something like the telomeres on the end of the DNA strands, which we're always looking at to have healthy, because we now know that's a real longevity indicator. If we are insufficient in vitamin D, that affects our telomeres. If we're sufficient in vitamin D's, the telomeres just have a better health story. And just being sufficient in vitamin D from other testing seems to show that we can increase our longevity by about 18 months. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty fascinating. But we also know that if you're not sufficient in vitamin D, I mean, that can lead to cavities and like TMJ. So just even seeing it for bone health. But what we also want to know, because we have so much fear around the sun touching our skin, from a beauty perspective as well. But what a lot of us don't understand, because we haven't had it explained to us, is that our skin is literally filled with thousands of vitamin D receptors. Literally the lock and key system for sunbeams connecting to the skin. So we need to fill those vitamin D receptors with sunlight, engaging in sunlight. And when those vitamin D receptors are brimming with vitamin D, then we don't have these bacterial ligands that can come in and basically just shut down the immune system. And there was a lot of sun study in Europe around the 1920s in Europe. And, the Nobel Prize was given for heliotherapy in like 1902 to Dr. Vines. Was that? And then there was Auguste Rollier, who had this clinic in Libations, Switzerland, where people would go all over the place, come from all over the place to heal tuberculosis and skin wounds and arthritis, and children that had rickets and weren't growing properly. And then you can look on Google and see these images, where they're there, they've got a tan, and then their bones start getting more balanced and less deformed. So there's all that part of our body literally needing to function with vitamin D, and our skin really needs it as well. And we want to build up that melanin and create our own sun protection. But of course, we want to interact with the sun wisely. We don't want to get burned. And then here's the other thing about sunscreen. So besides all the crazy chemicals that are being banned, for example, oxybenzene can't be used in Europe, and oxybenzene containing sunscreens have been banned in Hawaii and Australia because it's devastating the coral reef. And here's the thing with that ingredient: oxybenzene is not carcinogenic until it's exposed to sunlight.
Wow.
So that's crazy that we then apply to our bodies. And there's other chemicals in sunscreen that are disruptors. However, a really key thing to know is sunscreen applied to the body separates our reception of it splits the UVA and the UVB rays. So then with the sunscreen, we're not absorbing UVB, we're getting just isolated UVA, and UVA on its own creates skin sun damage.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then the UVB is the deliverer of the vitamin D. So we want the UVB, otherwise why be in the sun? And we need the UVA partnered with the UVA. So the sunscreen situation is not good on a lot of levels. Luckily, though, there is a whole other thing. There's all the other things from the sun that we want to get, the infrared, all of that. So actually that does come through even with sunscreen and even clothing. And that's stuff that we need as well, because also studies show that even in the upper part of the United States in the winter, people that were outside more, because this is when, in the winter, we can't get that vitamin D. So in the northern climate, and it just showed people that were outside getting the other visible light from the sun actually, boosted their immune system and made them less susceptible to different viruses. So that's important to know. That really, I think it's just another way to show that we really are supposed to be engaging with light and sunlight, including our eyes. There's all the stuff that we do to see, but then there are other cells in the eyes that are just working on receiving those rays and giving those messages to our cells and activating the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the middle of the brain, which is just harmonizing all of our circadian rhythms. So there's a whole beauty there to that relationship, and we don't want to be cutting it off, and we definitely don't want to be cutting off the UVB and just receiving the UVA rays.
So we're getting to the top of the hour, and
yes.
and I'm so thrilled because I love the sun.
Yeah.
And so I have a hot tub. So in the wintertime, I keep a sun glow year round because I sit in my hot tub in the wintertime, stay warm. And then I stay out there maybe 5-10 minutes and just if it's sunny. So what do we use to protect our skin?
Yes.
Do we just, So let's talk
so
about.
What's great is I make something called a sun harmonizer. And because SPF it's a whole term that can only be used for chemicals and for that whole industry. When we study plants, especially plants rich in pigments, so in our beautiful Everybody Loves the Sunshine oil, we've got things like sea buckthorn and calendula, which are rich in pigments. And then we've got it filled with oils that have shown to help reorganize the cells and prevent them from going down a sort of disorganized malevolent pathway. Things like frankincense, sandalwood, geranium have all been shown to really, sort of straighten out cell expression in the skin. And when we study various oils, like even olive oil, I don't have olive oil in there, but olive oil kind of gives you like a 6, 7, 8. Sort of like in an SPF sort of relation way. So what those oils do, or what the Everybody Loves the Sunshine does, it can extend your time in the sun. It's going to be different for everybody. So for somebody, that can maybe give them an extra 15 minutes. For like a really tanned Mediterranean person, that could be all they need. So this way you're receiving those sun's rays, you're nourishing your skin, and you can also use it after the sun if by chance you did get too much sun. But we really also, when we use sunscreen, we kind of cut off our relation to the sun and our understanding of like, oh, it's time for me to get out of the sun because my skin's getting a bit pink, that kind of thing. And then for blocking, because there are times when you don't want the sun, like you're going to do like 6 hours of, surfing in Hawaii, you can't wear a hat, you've definitely got to protect. And so for that, zinc So, you want to look for a really clean zinc. We use a non-nanoparticle, like non-oxida coated zinc. And what zinc does, and that's like that classic, you see like, old lifeguard with it down their nose. We, of course, try and make it as because it can whiten the skin, but we add all those pigments. It's basically like Everybody Loves the Sunshine formula, but with the zinc now. And we also have a zinc balm. I love the balm.
So
and
with
anyways,
your zinc, do you put so it looks like it's like,
it can be,
like
but you can
tinted
yeah,
lotion. So
yeah, it's likely that's a very good expression.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
like
you're
a tinted lotion.
not
Yeah.
just white, right?
Yeah, it's not white, but it definitely, can create a bit of a cast. But what zinc does is it deflects the rays so that it's all bouncing off of you. So it's literally a sun block. But we don't explore that whole thing of like SPF 30 and all that, because that's literally just for the chemical world. But with those two things, you can pretty much, engage with the sun. And then of course there's just like cotton shirts, cotton hats, and all of that. And then you're still getting all the infrared and all that beautiful everything else from the spectrum. You're just not going to be, getting that tan. But if you start slowly but surely, and you start in the spring. So even though I'm like in Canada and Ontario, the vitamin D producing violet rays return back to the sun around mid-February. So I will start my tanning journey then. Like from November to February, I don't have any. And then I, build up my melanin. And then by July, I've got full protection, unless of course I'm silly and would stay out in the sun all day or something. And then there's also a really good app called D-Minder. And you put in your location, so your geographical location in the world. And then anytime you have take a capsule vitamin D, or you have a sun session, you'll start the session and it will calculate how much vitamin D you're generating in that sun session. And then, or if you've taken a supplement, and then I can track my vitamin D levels all year round. And then I can also build it up, and then I see by November, I can't get any more sun. And then that's when I supplement. And definitely because we're kind of like solar storage batteries. So we want to get that sun when we can, store it in our bodies, and then supplement it with some capsules in the winter. And that's like kind of a general plan of how we can engage with the sun. And then, of course, if you're able to witness sunrise, witness sunset, get that vitamin D half an hour at noon, then you're also letting the sun guide your rhythms and your days, which then help a whole bunch of other stuff function in the body, like from the mitochondria to the bones to eye health to skin health. And really, when we're interacting wisely with the sun, it's not going to age us. It's going to be anti-aging. It's like what we're bringing to the sun. And if you're, drinking Coca-Cola and putting sunscreen on and, just baking for too long, that's going to be a different, sun story.
Wow. Well, this has been so wonderful having you here.
It's been fun.
Nadine, I want you to tell everyone about your website. How do they find you? And I noticed when I was there were articles that were on skincare, essential oils, oral care. We didn't even talk about that. Body care, sun care, skin care and sun care. And also about maternity and children. So tell everyone how we can find your site, because they're going to find both great articles and resources, but the products as well. So how do we go there?
Yeah, so we're livinglibations.com. You can email us at sage@livinglibations.com. Any questions, health, beauty, we will, oral care, we will do our best to, answer that or send you on a path of research. We also have free consults, just totally free and fun. There is, sometimes there's a bit of a wait list, but that's great. We have like best friends come, or like whole families come and ask questions and stuff. And then Instagram, it's Nadine Artemis Official or Living Libations. And then books, we have books on the site or wherever books are sold, and they're both actually also on Audible.
Oh, I'm definitely getting your books. This is wonderful. And I love the Audible too, but I'm so bad. I will get the Audible and the Kindle both.
I do that too sometimes.
So I'm totally all in my phone. But sometimes I want to look something up or
Yeah, and the beauty, I mean, people kind of call it a beauty Bible. So I think there's a lot of good tactical stuff in the book that, I mean, it's in the audio as well, but it's just a great reference book that you can just open and get what you need, by just opening the book and looking in the index and stuff. So
thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
oh, it was my pleasure.
And helping us be happier and healthier and more vibrant in our lives. It was great. Thank you, Nadine. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're just thrilled that you are here. One thing I am going to mention that if you would like to be part of our mailing list so that you know who our guests are, you'll also get access to their wonderful articles and programs and free gifts that they give us. Go to joinsmartwomen.com and you'll get our monthly theme-based easing. In addition, you'll be invited to the Smart Women's Academy, where we have a lot of wonderful resources and tools, and the Unlock Your Financial Power course. And it's all free. So come join us at joinsmartwomen.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Smart Women Talk, and that would be wherever you get your podcast, or to the Smart Women TV at smartwomentv.com. And you can subscribe so you will never miss a show. So until our next show, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album, When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.